Okay, we're going to get started, everybody. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the mayoral and deputy mayor candidate talk hosted by Happy City here at Memorial University. My name is Drew Richardson, the Vice Chair and Director of Communications for Happy City, and I want to thank you all for being here at this important event. Happy City St. John's is a nonprofit and nonpartisan organization dedicated to community engagement and civic education, and we believe that engaged citizens and informed voting are the foundations of a thriving community. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that this event is being held on the traditional territories of diverse Indigenous groups, and we acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of this province. I want to thank all the Happy City St. John's volunteers that made this event possible. Your dedication to civic engagement and education is on full display this evening. We also want to thank those of you who were able to attend tonight as members of the public. Your engagement in municipal politics keeps St. John's politics transparent, accountable, and responsive to the public good. Lastly, we want to thank all the wonderful candidates here for responding positively to our invitation and agreeing to be here for this event. Tonight is your chance to meet the mayoral and deputy mayor candidates and learn about the issues that matter to you and make informed decisions when you cast your vote. The mayor and deputy mayor you will elect will represent all of St. John's. I want to thank Memorial University for hosting us in this space, and now I'm pleased to turn things over to our moderator for this evening, Matt Babb, who will guide us through tonight's discussions with the candidates. But before I turn it over to Matt, I want to let you know that if you are leaving during the event, there's exits at the top left and top right, and if you have to go use the washroom during the event as well, at the right exit to the left, there's bathrooms available for you to use there. So Matt, the floor is yours.
Can everybody hear me? I speak loudly anyways, so it kind of amplifies it. Perfect. So just a couple little housekeeping rules for everybody. We are going to be doing 6 rounds. Mayoral candidates will answer first. Then it'll be deputy mayoral candidates. We're going to start left to right and then just go in reverse order each time to make it equitable for first answering and all that. Besides that, we're going to be about 2 minutes for each comment with no time for conversation. There's a lot of questions, a lot of really important issues we need to get through tonight, so I want to optimize our candidates' time to speak to those questions and your time to hear what they have to say. Excellent. Let's see how this goes. Thank you very much. So we're going to begin with opening statements. We're going to start with Danny Breen, left to right. Danny, the floor is yours.
Okay, I got the first question right. I got the mic on. Thanks very much, and thank you everyone for showing up. It's good to see such an interest in the election. Just wanted to start off a bit by just introducing myself. Some people may not know that much about me. I was born and raised here in St. John's, in downtown St. John's, just behind Duckworth Street, in a street called Prospect Street, with my 6 siblings and my mother and father. My father was a longshoreman who, when he retired as a longshoreman, became the secretary treasurer of the Longshoremen's Protective Union. So we were always brought up to be involved in the community and to be interested in our community. And from a very early age, I became a community volunteer and involved in the different things around the city. From minor hockey president for a number of years. If you think politics is tough, you should try that job. And then going on into right here in this building, actually, with the student union at Memorial University in the 80s. And then ran for council in 2009. Was elected as a councillor and served 2009, 2013. Re-elected, and then became mayor in 2017. Currently, before that, by the way, I worked in the insurance business. I had my own insurance practice, and I put that away in 2017 when I was elected mayor. Over the last decade, St. John's has undergone a remarkable transformation. And as mayor, I've worked to ensure that progress is driven by collaboration, innovation, and accountability. From strengthening regional partnerships and diversifying our economy to enhancing public services and opening the doors of City Hall wider than ever before, my focus has been on building a city that works for everyone. We've seen significant achievements in our city as grown and prospered. However, we still face many challenges. The housing issues, drug crisis, and public safety are of heightened concern to all our residents. All these issues can't be addressed by one politician, one mayor, one level of government, or one community organization. It requires collaboration, experience, and leadership. I've valued support of the people of St. John's over the last 8 years as mayor, and I ask for your support again this coming election as I strive to build a safe, sustainable, and welcoming community for everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Danny. Ivy Hanley, over to you.
Thank you for having me. As a 19-year-old, I began working here in the offshore industry. The people's resilience and kindness brought me here to live and to stay and build my life. It was the energy, though, as a young adult working in the offshore industry that attracted me to staying and building even more of a life, having children and businesses. I am jumping to mayor before councillor. We are all aware of that. It does give me a massive unfair advantage because I do not have a preconceived notion on how it should be done. And therefore, I'm going to be able to affect greater change. I am not going to be ingrained into the bureaucracy, the way it's run right now. If we continue to accept the status quo, how will our city's economy, our city's residents move forward? How will it grow? I grew up on a dairy farm with 80 head of brown swifts. I can promise you I have work ethic. I was a commercial diver in my early 20s, not only inspecting, but heavy civil work at Ontario nuclear plants and the Welland Canal. I traveled the world as a life support technician for saturation divers in high-pressure environments. I have professional training as a high-end cake designer. I've experienced single motherhood at one point and created an innovative daycare. Health and safety experience in the construction industry, including pipe inspection. I have development experience, including being a part of teams designing and navigating the permitting system for daycares, renovations, and commercial spaces in homes in our city. I've built many businesses from the ground up, including turning a $30,000 loan into a business in our city that brings in $3 million in revenue through the veins of our city. I provide employment and service to the community, and I've raised funds for multiple organizations through hands-on, in-person events. I, too, believe experience matters, real-life experience, because I must be able to relate to the people that we're creating the policies for. As a forward-thinking, innovative female, I have firsthand experienced the disconnect between the residents and the city of St. John's, and I want to fix that. And I ask you to elect me as Mayor Hanley.
Thank you very much. Ron Ellsworth.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Happy City for organizing this important event and for all the great work that you do in our community to make our community stronger and more connected. A quick snapshot about me. I've been deeply involved in our community, volunteering with a large number of organizations for years. Some of the organizations are Scouting, Habitat for Humanity, Evergreen Recycling, Genesis Center at Munn, Community Centers in Shea Heights, the McSheffrey Resource Center, and currently I chair the Virginia Park Community Center Board. This experience has shaped my passion for building a city that's inclusive, vibrant, and supports well-being for all residents. On council, my focus has been on the practical improvements that make daily life better, from enhancing public spaces and infrastructure to supporting active transportation, environmental sustainability. I believe the key to a happy city lies in how connected and cared for people feel in their own neighborhoods. I also want to take a moment to recognize and thank everyone who has come forward to participate in the City of St. John's municipal election. Your willingness to step up and contribute to our vital city is the key to its future. Moving forward, my vision is to keep driving initiatives that foster social inclusion, improve accessibility, create safe, enjoyable public spaces where everyone can thrive. Together, we can build a city that not only meets our needs, but inspires the pride and joy in our community. I look forward to hearing your ideas today and working together to make St. John's an even better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Bianca Lono.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bianca Lono, and I was also born and raised here in St. John's, Newfoundland. Actually, my family owned a roofing company back in the day, some people may remember, and they did actually some of the roofs and even the Memorial University campus. Unfortunately, my family is no longer with me now to be here for me on this journey, but I feel like this is kind of my Uncle Simon has inspired me to step it up and to same as Ivy as well. It kind of looks like I'm skipping the line a little bit, but just to kind of give you a little bit of background, I'm actually moved back from Ontario after living away for 20 years. Wait for it. It was a month before the Snowmageddon, and then right before the pandemic. So you can just imagine how that was, I was able to acclimatize myself with and reintegrate myself into my community when I wasn't allowed out of my house. So I had a little bit of a setback there. But the reason why I am running for deputy mayor is because I believe St. John's deserve more than just business as usual. For way too long, many residents have felt a little bit left out of City Hall decisions, and I'm hoping to be the person or to be one of the people to change that. So my vision is very simple. It's to strengthen partnerships with our communities, empower our neighborhood voices, protect our arts and heritage, and make City Hall transparent, accessible, and accountable. So that means clear communication, which we'll talk about this evening, fair taxes, support for local businesses, and action on houses, not necessarily endless studies and reports by third-party research. So I might be new to council, but I'm not new to listening, to collaborating, and working hard. I bring fresh energy, new ideas, and a commitment to building a city that works with its people, not just for them. St. John's is full of potential. I know that for a fact. And together, I think we can move from frustration to progress. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Rigel Penman.
Hey there. Thanks, everyone, for being here. My name is Rigel. And yeah, a bit of background about me. I'm not from St. John's originally. My parents met while they were both in the forces, so I kind of grew up all over Canada. We always had ties to St. John's, starting with the earliest being my grandfather was stationed here back in the Second World War. And then I made the decision to move out here in 2023. I came out here after a pretty broad and diverse work background in agriculture, as well as a lot of different small business settings and a little time in the legal profession. And since coming out here, I've mostly been working with a lot of small businesses and also spending a lot of time volunteering with community groups here in the city. And over the time doing that, I saw a lot of the potential that's been mentioned about the city, and saw so many people kind of seeing the same problems and seeing the same issues holding them back from being able to bring the city to its fullest potential. And so once I kind of saw how much energy there was for that change and how cohesive a lot of the energy around these ideas was, that was what made me want to step in and start trying to bring those ideas forward and actually make them into policy. In terms of how I want to try and help the city, I want a lot of my campaign to focus on rezoning and changing regulations throughout the city to allow for more dense housing units, to make housing affordable, as well as to make communities more accessible by creating businesses that are more evenly distributed. I also want to create more connected communities by increasing transit and accessibility through a lot of simple bread and butter stuff like snow removal on walking paths and sidewalks to actually allow people to get out and leave their houses in the winter. I also want to focus on public safety through things like other issues that feed into public safety, like housing, which is a major driving force behind that issue, as well as increasing the availability for treatment options for the various crises we're dealing with, and then also kind of refocusing how our municipal government and the citizens here have a voice in how our communities are kept safe. Sorry, I'm not watching a timer. Is that about good for time? Great. All right. Yes, thank you very much for coming down. I look forward to talking to you all more. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rigel. And those are your candidates. I think a round of applause to start us off is well earned. So a couple quick additional housekeeping items. My left to right system works great for the mayoral race because there's 2 people, but there's 3 for the deputy mayoral race. So it's going to be a little bit of a different setup to allow Bianca an obvious chance to be first and last to answer a question to make it fair all around. Second housekeeping thing, our next 3 rounds are going to have a follow-up. So there's almost 2 parts to those, and the last 2 are just single questions. Okay, so round 2, housing and affordability. So it's the same question for everybody. I can repeat it as many times as you like, just in case you don't get it all. We're going to begin with Ivy Hanley, going to Danny Breen, and then we're going to begin with Rigel Penman, Bianca Lono, to Ron Ellsworth. So the question, housing affordability or affordable housing has emerged as a major issue. St. John's has suggested increasing supply, building more housing units as a response to this issue. For voters who are currently facing housing struggles, what more could our next council be doing to address this issue? What would your approach be? Over to you, Ivy.
So housing obviously affects directly crime and addictions in our city, and we need to get that controlled. I've visited all the shelters in the city that would allow me in, and they've all said the same thing. If you don't have a roof over your head, we aren't going to be able to do anything for our people. Our city got $10.4 million given to us from the feds to eliminate barriers to building the housing we need faster. I'm happy with some of the work, grants for SDUs and permit fees being exempted. But what my question is the implementation of an e-permitting system to streamline approvals, payments, and assessments. Where is it? It's 2.5 years we've been quoted that it is going to take to get that out. What does it include and how much does it cost? In this age of digital media and apps, a program to provide the city permitting tracking, employee comment tracking on responses and timelines, along with payments, is not a 2.5-year project. I understand the procurement process and the red tape, but it's time to push forward that for our city developers so that we can have homes to live in. There's not a crane in the sky here, but our neighbor Halifax is booming. Proper management of our current affordables, but ones that are completed. Once that is done, then we can look at building more. Our seniors who have been left with no choice, seniors who have worked their lives in our city to move into affordables because of the high costs, are now currently self-policing their units by taking turns on watch in camp chairs as the city's management continues to flood them with residents who are selling drugs in their units. We will revise management and accountability of our city's affordables. These are our city's properties, and we need to be proud to own them. We need to control our council when it comes to development numbers. Misleading the market, as Mr. Ellsworth and Mr. Breen choose to do on July 27th, stating to the public they've approved over 2,000 new housing units. But when ATIP'd, even including reno and change of occupancy, we could only come up with 586. The people need proof of the other 1,400 units our council is attempting to mislead the public on, and if they exist, why did our ATIP not provide them? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. The issue goes back to how important this e-permitting system is. We need control of our development.
Thank you very much, Ivy. Danny Breen.
Thanks very much. And housing is one of the most important issues that we're facing right now. Every municipality across the country is facing the same thing. And any applications that are approved, and they're the ones that are approved, they don't always result in permits being issued for construction. Sometimes things change, and those construction don't take place. The money that we got from the Housing Accelerator Fund, or the city got, a lot of it was used to incentivize such projects as incentivizing the backyard suites, creating density. A lot that's helped a lot of projects move ahead is the provincial and federal government's HST reduction on construction of rental units. That's been a big help to helping the housing go along. But you know, this is not just a City of St. John's problem. It's another problem where we need to work in collaboration with the federal and provincial governments to get the answers and get the solutions that are needed for people. And you're right, we do have housing. St. John's is the only municipality in the province that has social housing or rental assisted housing in its jurisdiction. And the work that we're doing there is getting much more complicated. It's not as simple as being a landlord anymore. It's requiring services for people in it that we don't have those services in our staff. So again, we have to collaborate with other levels of government to be able to address those problems. That's the work that we do, and that's the work that we continue to do. and we are committed to working with our other federal and provincial partners and the community to help the housing crisis in the city.
Thank you very much, Danny. Rigel, over to you.
Yeah, so with regard to housing, that's one of the main issues I want to make a big part of my platform. And while I think that it's great to engage in practices like incentivizing more types of backyard suites and other density, I think that more efficient than relying on external funding is to kind of change our regulations to allow more St. John citizens to take care of themselves, get into the market themselves, and to allow for a more diverse spread of ownership of the housing market. So I think one way we can do that is by looking at a lot of regulations that are sort of out of date that restrict the types of houses that can be built and require a lot of the available opportunities to be focused in the hands of very wealthy large companies, and that really restricts both what units they're going to build, what market they're going to try and cater those units to, and who's going to end up owning those units. One big example that I always point to is rules around interior staircases requiring exceptionally large builds. Right, a lot of these rules were made at a time long gone by when we didn't build with the same materials. A lot of other building conventions weren't the same, and so we built this to make buildings more fire safe. But when you look at how that data is played out in the future, it's really not making our cities any safer, or our city any safer than other cities that don't have these regulations and are able to engage in more diverse and dense housing builds. So things like allowing for single-story structures, 2 to 3, single unit lot structures, 2 to 3 stories high, to only have, for example, one staircase is something that a lot of cities have done that have allowed for much denser housing that was also owned by a more diverse spread of people. Instead of having one large corporate landlord end up dominating the market, having all of that, the wealth generated by those people paying rent, then going to frequently corporate headquarters in Delaware or Toronto or somewhere outside the province. And so I think affecting who owns and who's allowed to develop housing is one of the most efficient ways that the city can step in, change regulations right now without needing to rely on external funding or increasing our own budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Bianca?
That was good. Thank you. I'm just going to put this out there because we announced the provincial election today. When it comes to housing and rent caps, that does fall under the provincial government. So now that we know that we're going to have a lot of people knocking on doors talking about that, I highly encourage everyone in this room to address that topic because we are the only province in Atlantic Canada that does not have rent caps. And that does become a bit of an issue when it comes to when we're talking about housing, because we have a lot of people also in the situation with rent evictions, where people, and I have my own personal circumstances with someone that I know that went through that after living in a home for a very, very long time and suddenly being out on the street. And not necessarily everyone who might need a shelter is, is an addict. Some people are literally being pushed out. And I think that Mr. Breen, you brought up a great point, because when we talk about city housing, that is very true, because we are one of the only cities that does that. There's actually there's 476, if I'm not mistaken, or 476 of the not-for-profits in this city are owned by the City of St. John's. However, there is over 2,580 that are owned by Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corp. So when you combine those two, you've got about 4,500 that are primary rental units that are meant for lower-income people, and that represents 4% of our population, which is not how many people who need affordable housing in this city. So I think when I think about what that looks like and having that divide, and I mean, as much as I do love the idea of the Housing Accelerator Fund, I don't necessarily agree that it might be going to all the right people. When we were talking about landlords and corporate landlords, and I'm not going to mention any names today, but as I've been talking to residents, there's a few key private landlords that have actually been really not been very great at helping that situation in terms of having overcrowding in some of their homes and kind of exploiting I know I got to go on the time, exploiting how many people can rent in that house. So there's a lot of different components to that, and I'm going to cut that off because you're looking at me, and we will come back to that.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Ron Ellsworth.
Thank you, and thank you, Bianca. You're right. The slum landlords in City St. John's has been problematic for a long time. We only have 7 or 8 of them that hold a lot of inventory. They are a problem, and we need to go after them. The question on e-permitting, April 2026, e-permitting will be available in the city of St. John's. The AF funding that we received, the 10.4 million, 1 million was allocated originally for infill lots for individuals who own their own properties recently to add to their own lots. So we've seen that uptake happen very quickly. So we moved from 1 million to 3.4 million allocation for that area. And we've seen 57 approvals done. 33 more applications are in the process, which we anticipate some of those applications will have double units created. So we anticipate altogether from that 3.4 million, approximately 100 units being created by current property owners, which becomes a double whammy. Then the affordability for the person living in that house, because now they have an income stream to help them stay in their own homes. And on top of that, individuals who have units. There was no need to tip the comments I made in April of 2027. All you had to do was ask for the list. I would have gladly given it to you. April 2027, I referenced the City of St. John's had done approximately 2,000 approvals in the previous year. And I stand by that. I stand by the numbers that are here. The ATIP was for residential housing units, which was permits that were done. So there's a bit of a disconnect. And the ATIP was also for 2024, not for the 12-month period that we were talking about when I talked about this in April. So this is where experience matters. This is why being involved, understanding where you are and what you're looking for is paramount in getting the correct information, getting the right information, so you can provide the proper details to your community. The development regulations, and Rigel is right,
I'm sorry, Ron, I'm going to need to cut in
development
there.
regulations need to be changed, which were done, and that's a great improvement for everybody within the city.
Thank you very much, Ron. We're going to move into our follow-up, back to the mayoral candidates with Danny Breen and Ivy Hanley, and then we're going to go, yeah, perfect. All right, so the follow-up. There has been suggestion that the current council hasn't been successful in increasing supply, having more housing built. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, I'd agree that we haven't been successful in reaching the huge targets that are being put out there. But what we've done is we've changed the development regulations to change the to give more ability for more to be built. We've given more incentives to build, but remember that city doesn't build houses. The city sets the climate for houses to be built. So if builders are not building houses, there's other factors involved. The cost of building a house is significant. The banks loaning to builders to build houses is a market that's tightened up as well. So there's a lot of other factors besides the city's involvement in it. The Housing Accelerator Fund that we've talked about was able to give us the finances to be able to incentivize increasing density, increasing people building apartments in their houses, doing backyard suites, introducing other sides of other types of housing. So, for example, we've relieved parking in a lot of different developments, particularly ones that are providing micro units in those buildings. So smaller units not requiring parking is an ability to get more of those built. So we have been successful in doing that work. I don't think you're going to see those benefits overnight in the numbers, and we're working towards it, but we're going to continue to work towards it in the future.
Thank you very much, Danny. Ivy.
Thank you. I appreciate the numbers I just got from Mr. Ellsworth, and I look forward to comparing them to the ATIP. But the problem leads with the exact sentence that is put out into the public eye is that as the city's housing lead, I'm proud to share that in 2024 alone, we've approved over 2,000 new housing units. That is the statement I ATIP'd, and I did not get that many housing units. So I look forward to going over these numbers. I appreciate it very much, but I also do feel there is a massive disconnect between our city residents and developers and the city of St. John's. Just leaving my nomination appointment, a developer I've never met in my life before walked up to me and said, if you are not elected, I'm done in this city. And he is not alone, and it is sad fact. We need to bring back a relationship between the people who build our city and the city council and the development management.
Thank you very much, Ivy. So the order is going to be Bianca, Rigel, then Ron.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bianca, over to you.
So I just want to touch on something in terms of when we keep saying, housing shortage, and I'm going to say it's a housing crisis. If you look at the 2021 census, there were over 4,700 empty or uninhabitable or derelict properties in the city of St. John's. That is more than the not-for-profit housing that we have. So my question when I look at that number is how are we going to be able to do enforcement to ensure that those properties are not just sitting there vacant, rather than we not necessarily needing to build more, but cleaning up what we have. I mean, you could walk around the city, especially I'm going to say downtown St. John's, that's where I live, and it is evident how many of those homes are vacant. And I'm going to just say to not get confused with any of the not-for-profit homes that have boarded up first floors, because that's what they do to keep out squatters. So that is an automatic thing. When someone moves out of a property, they board up the doors and they board up the windows on the first floor so that people don't break in and just so because they need a place to sleep. But when we have 4,700 empty properties in the city, I wonder, do we need to be building more and having that density, or do we really need to be looking at what we have and cleaning up that and enforcing that? There are bylaws that exist to ensure that we are making sure that those properties are maintained and they're not just sitting vacant for years on end. I mean, I've walked by some of them and they still have the sign in the window and like nothing has been done, nothing has been enforced. And I think that's a part of that partnership. And I'm not saying that is like the city's fault, so to speak. It's more so having the staff on hand to be able to enforce that, because also when we're giving out fines, that's also revenue for the city. So when I think of taxes, I don't think of taxing the people who are actually paying their taxes. I'm thinking about the people that are not necessarily maintaining those properties and letting those properties sit abandoned and empty. And look at me at time.
Thank you very much, Bianca. I very appreciate the self-policing. It makes my job a lot more friendly and a lot easier. Yeah. Rigel, over to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so in terms of do I think council's been successful in increasing the housing supply? Obviously, I'm of the opinion that a lot more could have been done. We haven't done nearly enough on that front. But I also do think it's great to consider the fact that there are so many unused units here. And I do think that municipal government can do a lot more to step in. And when we see units that are not only unused, but also falling into states of extreme disrepair, it is appropriate, I think, to examine that ownership. I mean, in a lot of places, principles like expropriation and eminent domain get used when a property has been abandoned to the point that it's causing a public safety hazard. And so when we've got houses that, I've participated in community cleanups with volunteer groups where we went to one property that was completely boarded up. There was nobody living in it. The house to the next of it had people coming and going. We weren't sure what they were doing there, but the area behind it people had been using it as a dump effectively. There had been open bags of trash that were just thrown there and rooted through that had clearly piled up over months. We cleaned up as much as we could, but there was still plenty of work to be done, and I couldn't help but think that when a property gets this bad, it's clearly not being actively managed by the owner. The owner is not gaining any, they're not using it. It's really inappropriate to allow it to become this much of a hazard while also denying other people the opportunity to use a valuable housing unit just so, whatever the logic was, so the person could use it as a tax write-off or whatever they were doing with it. At that point, they're just not holding up their end of the social contract, and I do think the municipality can do a lot more to step in, whether it's fines or at the more extreme end, like I say, tools like eminent domain, to say we are going to repurpose this property, we're going to allow a local development company to fix it up, sell it, and we're going to start making both economic and social use out of it that way, rather than continuing to let it go to waste. So, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Ron. Of course. There has been suggestion that the current council hasn't been successful in increasing supply, having more housing built. Do you agree?
So when this pandemic or epidemic or crisis, whatever you want to use to define it, which we all understand we're in, started, all levels of government acknowledged that it was not going to be one solution to get to the end result. Governments have a responsibility, and Bianca and Rigel, I think talked about some of the frustrations that the current council has with the outdated legislation we operate under and waiting for the provincial government to get the City Act completed, which they are working through, which would then give us more powers to enact some of the things we'd like to do. The issue around if we've done enough or not, really, when you look at the development regulation changes that's allowed for increased density in pretty well every zone within the city. It's also allowed for extra height density coming out of the university, the student area. So a lot of that work has been done by government and supported by the HAF funding to get the initial piece done. Then it falls to the industry to start building and doing newer development. Canadian Home Builders Association, which is a voice for the industry, has worked very well alongside of the City of St. John's, working through the changes that were brought forward and implementing other changes that they want to see done to be able to enable the developers to move forward. They've acknowledged themselves in the last 2 weeks that the industry still has a shortage of labor to be able to build houses. So I think we need to start looking at getting some of these prefab units brought into the province, because construction here is not moving fast enough to meet the needs of what we have here and what we need to have done. The prefabs become a bit of a challenge because there's federal regulations around the building codes that we got to get through. And I think that's, once again, the collaboration between all levels of government to remove that obstacle so prefabs can become a more normalized event so we can get units here faster and ready faster for the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. And that concludes our second round. We're going to move into our third round, or round 3, crime and social challenges. So we're going to begin again with Ivy Hanley going first and Danny Breen going second. All right. On the doorsteps of our city, candidates are hearing a lot about crime and the social challenges. There seems to be an increased focus in this election cycle, whether it is homelessness, growing visible evidence of poverty, or addiction. How do you see these issues and how would you address them? Ivy, over to you.
The first step to improving this situation that the city has ignored for the past 5 years is to implement a municipal enforcement team. If Mount Pearl can do this, St. John's can do it. We are tying up our already strained RNC with dog bite calls, noise complaints, and more. That is what municipal enforcement teams are for. I'm demanding accountability in our offices for municipal issues with this. It will give the RNC more manpower to deal with the issues they are trained in, drugs and crime. I'm not going to allow our city to succumb to the point of Barrie, Ontario, a state of emergency to deal with this crisis. You will not hear myself stating to residents, I didn't know there was a drug problem. I live here, I experience it every single day. Our city residents have watched their home values drop, their children find needles and splash pads, and mail workers have to have puncture-proof gloves now to do their job. These residents must begin to know their safety is not a privilege, it's a right for all of us. The provincial government has provided our province, and being the most dense area, mainly our city, with $1 million worth of safe drug supply last year alone. I'm not here to debate safe injection sites, if they're good or not for our city. But what I am here to state is if you're going to hand our city residents, some who are not of a sound mind, weapons, because a needle and a crack pipe is a weapon, and have no exit plan for our city, no legislation in place to regard safe supply, no availability for on-demand rehab, and not a single drug and weapon-free shelter in our city, you shouldn't be handing these items out. I'm speaking to those displaced and those addicted, and they all say the same thing. I'm scared of the shelter system. I'm safer sleeping in the woods. I will not stand by and watch our children's teachers place blackout blinds on their classroom windows, so yes, this is vulgar, so that our children do not see sex acts, so they do not see those injecting. It is a fact in our city. I appreciate the provincial government's pilot program for the RNC special constables. However, they still have not provided an exit plan to the materials they're handing out to our city, and I will demand that.
Thank you very much, Ivy. Danny, over to you.
Well, first of all, the reason why Mount Pearl has municipal enforcement officers, they work under a different act than the City of St. John's Act. So we've been looking to have the City of St. John's Act, which was, I think it was put into effect in the 1920s. And we're looking to get that replaced and have been looking to get it replaced for 25 years. But it's a prescriptive act that doesn't allow us to have municipal enforcement. So that's the reason we don't have it. So the policing is totally under the responsibility of the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary. That said, there probably hasn't been a mayor and council that's dealt with the issues of public safety, drugs, and those other issues in all the years. This is something that we deal with constantly. We work closely with the provincial government and the constabulary. We worked with the businesses downtown with the Downtown Safety Coalition. From that, we had to add security at cost to the St. John's taxpayers to supplement security in the pedestrian mall, in the parks. We've added security in the parks. The Special Constable, I would disagree with you on the Special Constable initiative. Special Constables have a role to play in most police forces across the country. It's an opportunity to put police officers on duty that where the frontline police officers are not required, for adding security at different events, for doing community policing. So it is an opportunity to be able to do more within the confines of the economics that they face. So we also look abroad. As a member of the Big City Mayors Caucus, we're just last week in our meeting, we're now lobbying the federal government on bail renewal or bail changes to the bail system and changes to the criminal code to tighten up the criminal code so we can address these things. So that happens on my national lobbying with FCM, where I'm a member of the Big City Mayors Caucus and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Board. So these are ones that go across all the different. We could talk for hours on this one because it's a huge issue in the city.
Thank you very much, Danny. Going to our deputy mayoral candidates. So the order now is going to be Ron first, and then it's going to be Rigel, and then it's going to be Bianca. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. I know it's a. Listen, I had to do this while you guys were talking, so it's not a foolproof system designed up here. Over to you, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. No, there's no doubt that since we come out of COVID and the challenges coming out of COVID, our city, like many cities across the country, have faced challenges like we've never seen before. And being the capital city for the province, one of few jurisdictions that have services and programs available that are provincially mandated is where everybody ended up coming to. And we got flooded quickly with a large number of individuals, not only across the province, but across the country, coming here seeking supports, seeking, comfort from places that are shelters there looking to try and do the piece. Have we done enough? None of us have done enough. We all need to own this. Everybody in this room needs to own this. The reality is we can stand around and point fingers all we want. We have mental health issues. We have addiction issues in our community. Many of our loved ones are afflicted with mental health and addictions. So sit here to try and blame somebody or place blame or trying to point fingers at somebody is not what we need to be doing. We need to be working collectively, cooperatively, not only in our community, across the province, across the country. We at City Hall have worked very hard in connecting with the provincial government, with healthcare workers, social, be it the shelters, to try and make sure that the initiatives that are there to support the individuals who are challenged, but also the supports and programs from within the city itself, increasing our servicing of safety within communities, increasing our security in the playgrounds and open spaces, increasing our public works staff to be in the parks and cleaning up more. We're all trying to do our best to get through this crisis. But to sit here and blame somebody is a failure on all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Over to you, Rigel.
So when it comes to things like public safety, that is, like we said, a multifaceted issue that a lot of things feed into. And I think in our city in particular, one of the most important ones is the availability of housing and treatment options. I know that for a lot of people who are trying to use treatment options and getting into shelters, there's a lot of arbitrary barriers that prevent them from having access to these services and end up forcing them back out onto the street where they're more likely to relapse, more likely to get hurt, more likely to be exploited by the existing organized criminal element. I think when you look at what types of services we want to have available, we absolutely should be focusing on making rehabilitation and treatment services as accessible as possible for anyone who wants to get into them. And yes, we absolutely also need to focus on making them safe places. But that's not about turning people away at the door. That's about maintaining the spaces once we've created them, and about knowing who needs to be in which spaces. We've seen numerous other cities across North America take a blunt policing approach to issues stemming from organized crime and drug flow, and we've seen cities like Baltimore and Detroit throw more militarized police capacity than St. John's could ever afford at the problem, and it only got worse. So while I think that policing is absolutely an essential component of how we deal with this, and I do think there's room for improvement with, like Mayor Breen pointed out, the structure of how our municipal government interacts with other levels of government like provincial and federal, because that whole environment holistically determines what our policing policies are. But I think to the extent that we in the municipal government have a voice, we also want to make sure that whatever enforcement mechanisms we have, we aren't focusing them on the most visible victims of crime, because people who are trying to get into rehab programs, they don't own poppy fields, and people who are flying drugs into our community on private planes, they don't sleep on benches. So if we want our law enforcement to solve this problem, I think it needs to be focused on the roots of the problem and not the low-hanging fruit. And so, like I say, I think for those people that are in the visible situations, we need to focus on treatment and availability, and then focus on accountability and the municipal government having a voice in how the policing goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Over to you, Bianca.
Thanks. Those are some great points too, Rigel. So I'm not prepared to sit here and say that I have all the answers for these problems, because my first question is what is the level of accountability and a collaboration between the RNC and the province? Because are we not the only province in Canada that has our because it's RNC, but the police is run by the province. Typically in a large municipality or any municipality, that comes out of our property taxes, and that is funded by the municipality. So that kind of puts a little bit of a handcuff on there. So I have a lot of questions about how that works. And when it comes to policing, because there was some activity that was going on behind my house, and it was a domestic, and 3 cop cars showed up, and they were both fully staffed. So I mean, that to me looks like it doesn't make sense, because those resources could be allocated somewhere else, but I don't have the answers to that, because those are the kinds of things that I wanted to meet with you, and we have to talk, that I wanted to ask about those questions. But when it comes to addiction, I'm just going to put this out there, and I'm going to say this from my own, I say not my personal experience, but in my personal family, that addiction does not start on the streets. It starts with pharmaceuticals and drugs that are being prescribed by family doctors, and then it moves from there. I mean, they always say, like they used to say marijuana was the gateway drug, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it starts usually with someone who has been prescribed some pain medication by their family doctor, and then it goes from there. And so when I look at addiction on the streets, that's what we're seeing, because that's the end result when people have hit rock bottom, but not necessarily where it's starting. And that's a perpetuating cycle. As much as I am very sad that we have a lot of doctors that are retiring right now, there's a little part of me that is not sad about that, because I mean, and I'm going to say this because my father is no longer alive. He was a victim of that. He was prescribed morphine. He was prescribed fentanyl, and he was not terminally ill. So I'm just going to put that out there, because he had a roof over his head. He doesn't fall into that same category of what we see on the streets, but the next wave is coming. And I think that's something I feel really strongly about. And then in terms of addiction help, the other part of that as well is that we can't force people to take the help if they don't want to. So there's a bigger picture of this, and you're giving the look where I need to stop talking. But I'm not comfortable sitting here and just saying that I'm going to spew a bunch of answers that I don't have, because there's a bigger picture to that.
Thank you very much, Bianca. So we're going to go into the follow-up now. So back to our mayoral candidates. It's going to be Danny, then Ivy. Some would say that these problems aren't really a municipal issue, or ones that the city can really address. How would you respond to that? Over to you, Danny.
Well, how I respond to that is I tell them, I use this line a lot. The federal government has the money, the province has the jurisdiction, and the city has the problem. And that's how it works. So we have to work with the other levels of government, because that's where the money and the jurisdiction and the ability to deal with the problems is. So collaborating with them is important. And if we're talking about drugs, I think the one thing that I would do tomorrow, if I could, is put a one-stop center in St. John's where people go in, and if they need a clean needle, yes, they can get a clean needle. But if they say, I want help, they get help. And they get a place to go. If they say, I need a roof over my head, you can get a place to get a roof over your head. Giving somebody a phone number is not good enough. It's just not good enough. And that's where we need to get in this city. And that's what I'm working towards getting in this city, because that's the answer.
Thank you very much, Danny. Over to you, Ivy.
Follow up again?
Oh, of course.
Thank you.
Some would say that these problems aren't really a municipal issue or ones that the city can really address. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think in my last answer I was pretty clear that I am upset about the provincial government's decision to hand that out with any exit plan, any on-demand rehab available, and now it's the city's problem. I do understand about municipal enforcement team and the St. John's Act stopping that. But what I'm here about is listening to it takes 25 years to reinvent the St. John's Act, and we are still working on it. It should not take 25 years. The provincial government is doing it, but we're affected by the fact that it's not done yet. And that needs to pressure. We need, as a municipal government, to pressure the provincial government to get it done faster. Because right now, our city is struggling because of the St. John's Act. I will have to say, Mr. Breen, that I did state I appreciate the provincial government's pilot program, so I'm not sure why you said you don't agree with that. I think you might have misheard me. I was just upset about the fact that they handed out goods with zero exit plan. Mr. Ellsworth commented that there's a lot of blame being placed. There's a root cause to this. We need to admit that. There is items being handed out with no exit plan, with no on-demand rehab, and no way to collect those needles. So, if you say that's blame, that's kind of following the root cause and talking about it. It is not trying to bully anyone. It's trying to figure out where the items are coming from and what we're going to do with them. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Ivy. Going over to our deputy mayoral candidates. So we're going to begin with Rigel Penman. Then it's going to be Bianca Lono. And then it's going to be Ron Ellsworth. Rigel, over to you when you're ready.
And so this is just still the people saying that it's not a city issue question?
Yeah. So it's still
Okay.
that follow-up question. I can
Okay,
repeat
excellent.
it for you if you like.
Okay. Sure, please.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Some would say that these problems aren't really a municipal issue or ones that the city can really address. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I very much agree with stuff like what Mayor Breen is saying about Ms. Hanley, that we do need to provide more pressure, or we need to be as active as we can in trying to advocate for changes in the legislation that exists at other levels to allow us the freedom to do what we need to do here in the city. Because there are a lot of problems that we simply don't have the legislative power to address. Right? That's not our wheelhouse. We were never granted the authority to do it. That being said, there are other tools that we can use to address those problems through other means, and I absolutely agree with Mayor Breen's statements that the number one thing we can do here right now is increasing treatment and housing and a way to get people off of the streets and out of these situations. Because policing's out of our hands, that's where I think the majority of our focus should be. And then when it does come to how we address policing, I think it is exactly that. It's advocating for those changes at the other levels of government and trying to create an environment where we do have more of a direct say. I didn't really expect this level of interjurisdictional legislative reform to be such a hot topic in this debate, but I love it. I was expecting this to be something I got pushback on because it's too boring for people to care about, but it's the issue. So I absolutely agree. We should be pressuring for more freedom and independence as a municipal government to have more of a direct say in how our communities are kept safe. But for right now, the tools that we have that we can use are things like treatment, and those are within our purview. We can, there are some battles we can fight and can win right now, other ones that we're going to need to reposition for and are going to be fights for the future. But these are things we have the power to at least help with city jurisdiction, even if we can't solve them completely and holistically by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Over to you, Bianca.
when I was growing up, we had neighborhood watch programs. Does anyone remember? I see some nods. And so there are some signs around the city, but they just haven't been taken down. And I'm only going to say this because we're really quick to point a finger at the province or the municipality. But I'd like to take a look at the room and say, would anyone in this room be willing to be a part of a neighborhood watch program again? Because I hate the idea, and I got reamed on this on Facebook, with Skeets on the Streets as being the number one go-to to find out what's happening in our community and to be policing what's happening. But, we could work together as a community while we're working behind the scenes to update some of those bylaws and update some of those acts that are really out of date, to be able to collaborate and look out for one another. When I was young, everyone looked out for one another. We were out on the streets as kids. We didn't have games and phones and all the rest of it, and people looked out for one another. And now I feel like we're kind of afraid to speak up, but it really takes us as a community, I believe, to be a part of that. And while we're working behind the scenes as a municipality and with the RNC and with the province, that we could also be a part of that as that collaboration and keeping an eye on each other. And many voices makes a big change. So I just wonder, there is something that we could be doing as a community as well to help facilitate that in the meantime while we're waiting for all the red tape to going through all the red tape and changing that. Because a neighborhood watch, they actually offer that program through the municipality where they bring in the RNC and people can come, they have, whether it's at a community center, and they will have an RNC, they will help you create that. They help actually create that program for that particular neighborhood. But we need engagement. People need to want it. So we're sitting in this room and we're talking about how we want to fight crime, but my question to everybody here is, are we willing to be a part of helping that, being part of that problem, or are we going to be part of the solution? Look, I finished.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Over to you, Ron.
I'm going to segue in off of Bianca's, if you don't mind. Neighborhood Watch is right. It's the city of St. John's as a coordinator. We go out, we engage in communities, we talk to neighbor streets, we talk to the residents, but this program only works if residents are willing to be engaged. And we're not getting the engagement for that Neighborhood Watch program, so that's unfortunately where we are on that one. On the legislative change, it's sooner than later. The city legal staff meet with the bureaucratic provincial staff every Wednesday morning to go through the legislation line by line. That's how it's being done. And they're working through it to get it done. So it's sooner than later. And when that happens, the powers that will be bestowed to the city of St. John's to enact and deal with a lot of these issues that we're struggling with now will become real. And then you'll be able to get to some of this movement done, some of these properties that we're challenged with that we go to court over, and the court dismisses all 13 charges because the city's being too mean to the property owner. Well, we lose our ability then to do anything when the courts don't support what we're trying to get done. So the real challenge, I guess, overall is legislation is coming. We hear that the problems within community. The RNC will tell us the same thing. People are not reporting crime stats, then those areas are not getting support because they're not getting the information. We had the same challenge within 311. I was at a meeting the other night in the community somebody raised an issue about a playground problem. So I asked them, did they report it to 311? No, I didn't report it. So even it may not be the Neighborhood Watch initiative where people want to get engaged or in level engaged, but in your community, if you see an issue that's municipal related, you want engagement, you want cooperation, you want transparency, report the issue, get it into the system so our staff can deal with it and make our safe a little bit community, a little bit safer in the small pieces we do. And that has to do with drug paraphernalia and playgrounds also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. And that concludes our third round. So it's 8:03 p.m. So what we're going to do to make sure we get as many topics touched is the next two rounds are going to be 1-minute answers. And I'm going to be pretty strict on it. So apologies in advance if I cut into your... listen, I'm just looking. I'm not necessarily looking at anybody. So we're going to move right into it. Back to our mayoral candidates. It's going to be Ivy, then Danny. So round 4 is on transparency and accountability. Civic engagement for all levels of government is tough in between election cycles. Some suggest that the city isn't doing enough to engage the public over the choices St. John's makes. Do you think there are steps that need to be taken to help civic engagement in between elections? And if so, what needs to change? Over to you, Ivy. Thank you.
The fact that this is even a question in the debate shows that public accountability has been eroded with our current council, and we need to build that back. We need to bring back public debate. It will re-engage our media. The private meetings by council have been largely extended past the only subjects approved for them, legal, intergovernment, and HR. We need to stop the effects that private meetings have on a councillor's vote, trying to stay with the crowd instead of standing on their own and voting as they feel is right. No one should be swayed in private to vote a certain way. I've watched council meetings when elected officials are bullied by others when they ask a question, being told, you had time to decide and talk about this in private before. Save your questions for the private meeting. This is not democracy. This is an attempt at control. We need to bring back public debate. We need every councillor to feel heard and safe in our chambers. Each voice is what makes our city a hub of investment and prosperity. We can do a lot to improve transparency and accountability in our city. We can have, am I cut?
You're cut, unfortunately.
1 minute, really?
I know. Perfect. Over to you, Danny.
So when I first got on city council in 2009, all the committee meetings were held in private. They were open to the public, but they weren't advertised. There was nobody showed up to them from the public unless something happened where somebody knew about it. So one of the things that we did is we created, instead of having committee meetings, we have committee of the whole. Now, committee of the whole, the regular meetings are both streamed. They're both available to the public to watch live. They can go to the website, watch the tape of it. They can go to an agenda, click on a subject, and look at the public debate on that subject. I disagree with you. There is no private meeting discussion about these where decisions are made and then you go out and do the theater. That's not true. We have those discussions. I think what's getting confused here is they're talked about in the committee of the whole. Next week they're talked about it again in the regular meeting. And what happens is that if somebody never saw the committee of the whole, they may not have seen the whole debate. But why the system is good is we debate it, we give it a week, people have a chance to give us their feedback, and then we vote on it in the public meeting.
Thank you very much, Danny. So we're going to move to our... So we're going to move to our deputy mayoral candidates. So this time it's Bianca, you're up first. And then it's going to be...
1 minute. Okay.
And then it's going to be Rigel Penman, and then it's going to be Ron Ellsworth. All right, Bianca, over
I'm
to
going
you.
to be super quick here now. So I want to talk low-level transparency and civic engagement. So, for example, if you want to sign up for city newsletters, do you know that there are about 32 that needs to be streamlined? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't enjoy, the only other person that sends me out 32 emails is Bath and Body Works. And it is out of control. I'd like to see that all in one place. The one, I didn't set my timer. The one thing also I'm going to talk about, we were joking about this before we started because I had an event on Thursday night and I did not check my personal email. Does anyone here sign up for text messages for garbage day? Okay, a few. Okay, well, I just got one on my phone. But you know what I don't get is a text message to let me know that there's street cleaning or that there's snow clearing. That is a bane of my existence. And I'm going to say that when I talk about transparency, no offense to everybody in this room, but we know that email is going to cost me money. It doesn't cost me any money if I get a text message and I miss garbage day. So it's those types of transparencies, if you want to talk really low level, in terms of that is really important. And then my time is up, isn't it?
Thank you very much, Bianca. Over to you, Rigel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there could definitely be more done to improve transparency. Even though the city does publish a lot of information right now, I've found that when I go around to people and started talking about my policy base, a lot of them were really surprised to find out about information that was published on the site. It's just not really promoted or promulgated to the public generally. And so I do think just a more active vein of communication to let citizens know what their money's being spent on, how their city's being managed, would be something that would increase both trust and participation a lot more. And I think if we increase that participation, it results in getting better policies. I mean, that's generally the concept of democracy. And so if we try to just increase that general engagement, I think that's one of the first steps we can take for transparency, because right now, when I look around, I see a lot of really good rules in place and really good pieces of information available that are just not being used because people aren't being made aware of them. And I think if we make citizens more aware of those tools, that's immediately the first step to huge improvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Over to you, Ron.
I guess this is where talking fast comes in. So on the engagement piece, if you look at the website, everything goes on in the cities on the website. The changes we made were changes requested by the community because we were giving them one email with too much information. So the feedback was, I want to sign up for an email on the things I'm interested in only. So it'd either be snow clearing, a development piece, what's happening in my neighborhood. So that's why you're seeing the changes there. If you look at the city website, for example, the 10-year plan is there. 7 years are done. There's a chart that shows you good, bad, ugly. Red is really ugly, that what's done, what's not done. The meetings are done. They're populated out, sent out again on Friday afternoons. Online, they're always available for anybody to go look. The problem, folks, is civic engagement is an all-time low, because while people want to complain about not having information, they're not willing to go look for the information or have it presented to them where they want to be able to access it easily.
Thank you very much, Ron. Let's go into our follow-up for this one. We do the reverse order. So, Ivy, you're going to be up, and then Danny, you're going to. And no, zero away. Yep, so I'm going to do the question now. So, Ivy, yeah. So, Danny, you're up first, and Ivy, you're yes. That's on me. It's late, and I'm a little tired at this point. Excellent. All right, so the follow-up question is this. If you came across a disengaged voter on the campaign trail, a voter who doesn't believe their city cares about them or is going in the direction they are happy with, what would you say to them?
I actually had this happen to me in the Battery a couple days ago. I will not vote. I'm done. I am sick of the city municipal elections. I don't want to hear it. We've lived here in the Battery and been forgotten about, and we don't care to vote. I had to spend half an hour to convince that resident to vote, and they did agree that they are going to cast a vote this year. And I think that's important, and it's because we're going out there and visiting the residents and seeing them in their homes and seeing their issues around them in the ghouls where they don't have water. And we're going to see the Battery and the city trails that are not maintained in any way, shape, or form there. And we have seniors that are doing it for us in the winter. And talking to them is what you can change their mind and get them to vote and get them to engage again. And that's why communication and also campaigning is so important for us all to actually get out there and meet the residents in person.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Danny.
Yeah, I talk to an awful lot of people in the run of a day and in the run of a week. I'm out around at various events and various places. As I say, my Costco consultancy is probably the biggest one I have, as you get to talk to everybody then. But people, I generally don't come across people who say, I'm never voting, I haven't voted, and I'm not going to vote again. I do come across people who say, you know what, I just don't feel it's important to vote. I'm just not involved in it. I got no interest in it. And I start talking to them. And usually we'll come to the end of the discussion around, yeah, you know, you're probably right. There's a lot of things that happen here that are important to me. Maybe I should pay more attention to it. Point is, because you're talking to somebody, just make sure that they understand what it is that we're doing here. We're providing the services that touch people every day. We're unlike the other levels of government who are far removed. We're the ones you're going to see at the grocery store or at Costco or at those places. That's why they relate to us probably more than they do to other politicians.
Thank you very much, Danny. Let's go over to our deputy mayoral candidates. It's going to be Rigel Penman, Ron Ellsworth, and then Bianca Lono. Rigel, over to you.
Yeah, when it comes to speaking to disengaged voters, that is something I've come across at various times in my life, whether I was in school or more recently, and I always kind of just remind them of the same basic principle that you might not want to play with politics, but politics is going to play with you. And the power exists whether you take advantage of it or not. You have the opportunity to make a change and make your voice heard. And a lot of the time it might seem like, yeah, it's, due to the nature of our democracy, one voice amongst thousands gets lost. But repeatedly throughout history, we keep seeing that that is not the case, that when you show up and when you get engaged, it really does matter. And I think that when you talk about disengagement, it's just people who are starting to feel powerless and starting to feel like they won't be able to affect a change. And so I just try to remind people that this power is here, it's vested in us, and if enough of us just stand up and take that power back, there's nothing anybody else can do. We get to decide how we want to run our city, how we want to run our country. We just need to stand up and take advantage of that capacity. And so I remind people of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Ron, over to you.
Thank you. No, in my 4 years, I haven't had anybody come to me and say they're not voting. We've had a number of people in our community that feel disenfranchised, feel that they struggle to make sure their points are heard. Just because we don't agree with you don't mean we don't hear your points. The younger voters, I'm going to pick on Kate Cadden because she's here. I can pick on her because she's all the way up there. I'm hoping with more of those engagement with younger voters happens and we get that piece going. But really for us who are elected officials, we spend 4 years day in and day out in community, advocating, communicating, and I guess you want to call it campaigning within the community each and every day. So we're hearing a lot of feedback from the community. So I don't really think, that we're going to make much change. Look here in the room tonight. Just look behind you. Happy Cities, nonpartisan group, doing an event. And, that room is mostly empty.
Thank you very much, Ron. Over to you, Bianca.
So whenever I've encountered that quite a few times, I guess, while I've been out meeting people. And the first question I ask them is, what has them discouraged and what has them disengaged? Because everyone has a different version of what makes them unhappy with the city or with the council or whatever that might be. And then the second thing that I do is have a conversation about how important municipal politics is. And I hate that word, but it is, because I feel it is the foundation of government. It is the bridge of communication between the municipalities and in the province. And in a province like Newfoundland, it is more important than ever because we have so many small communities that if we do not have municipal representation, then the province is just going to bulldoze over us and they're going to make the decisions for us. And so that really is my response to that. I have yet to have anyone turn. We've had a lot of good luck with this, and we've had a lot of people turn around and say that they're going to vote. But for anyone who, and I don't think anyone in this room believes that your vote doesn't matter or your vote doesn't count, because when anyone says that to me, I have 2 words for them: Donald Trump. That's what happens when people don't care about voting. So I'm going to leave it on that.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Okay, so we are done our 4th round. We're going into our 5th round. So this will be our last round of questions before final closing statements. So it's still 1 minute for this. We'll go back to our mayoral candidates. With Danny, you starting, and Ivy, you're going to take second on that one. So this one is on Metrobus. The number of people using Metrobus has nearly doubled since 2021. The service has seen some improvements in that time, and over the next term, the bus network will start to be electrified. But the overall number of buses is not projected to grow significantly, and the basic shape of the network has not changed. Surveys indicate it is among the services voters are least satisfied with. Do you see a need for major overhaul, and if so, where would you start? Danny, over to you.
Well, I think, first of all, Metrobus is managed by the Metrobus Commission, which has 2 councillors that are representatives on that commission. So as a council, we oversee the operation, but we don't get involved in these daily decisions of that. But we do approve the strategic plans and the other information that comes forward. We have had a tremendous increase in ridership. We've also been able to add the low-income bus passes through the provincial government, which was a big bonus to us as well in terms of extra ridership, but also in revenue that we needed to be able to expand the bus service. I think the next thing that we need to look at with Metrobus is how we're going to be able to handle the regional aspects of it. We're going to have to work with Paradise and Mount Pearl in particular to see how the bus system can service their communities and what that takes place and what it looks like. To do that, we will probably have to look at some additional capital requirements for buses into the future, and that would also be part of the electrification of the fleet, which is something that it will happen at some point here. But I think right now we're kind of in that growing pain with Metro buses that we've had this sudden surge in the increase. We have underserviced areas, and we're going to need some capital investments.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Ivy.
Thank you. Yes, ridership does continue to grow, and so does the revenue. It's been great that they had almost $700,000 in a surplus. That went on debt. So that is a good thing, but it also can be looked at as sometimes it's good to reinvest. Oh, sorry. You know, if we're having a surplus and we need more buses, sometimes servicing the debt fully with any surplus, it should be considered maybe to put it back into the system so that we can start looking at getting more buses. Right now, there is no plan to grow it. We did just get $50.3 million between the three province, feds, and municipally to update into new hybrid and diesel buses are coming on the way. But it's not to replace, it's just to replace the fleet. It's not to add buses. We need to focus on adding buses. It needs to have a plan, and we also need to start talking about a public bus depot. Where is the plan for that? If we're going to expand into Paradise and Mount Pearl, we need a public bus depot to speed up the service.
Thank you very much. Over to our deputy mayoral candidates. So we're going to start with Ron, Bianca, and Rigel.
So we don't see the numbers continue to increase. They were 5.2 million. Now they've dropped down to 4.8 million. So we're actually seeing ridership drop, not increase. The numbers of routes that are out there, the zip routes have increased, the timing have increased, and there is a plan. The plan for increased Metrobus gets us to 2026 with all routes being down to a half hour. Mount Pearl and Paradise have their own challenges. This is a municipal service. Those municipalities have to come to the table and pay for their own services and programs. That needs to happen. It can't be done on the backs of the taxpayers of St. John's. Very quickly, I'm going to give you the additions for the summer of 2025. Additional bus on Route 10 Saturdays, additional bus Route 10 Sundays, additional bus Route on 12 on Saturdays. For fall, they will continue on in fall 2025. We see additional bus for 10 weekdays, on Route 10, for weekdays, additional bus on Route 10 for Saturdays, additional bus on Route 1 for weekdays, 7:45 to 12 a.m., additional bus on Route 1 Saturday, 6 p.m. to 12:30 a.m., additional route on Sunday, Route 1 on Sunday from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., 2 additional buses on Route 2 Saturdays, 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., 2 additional buses on Route 2 on Sunday, 6 to 8 p.m.
I'm going to jump
and
in there.
I can carry on. So to say there's no plan is not correct. There is a plan, and it's being implemented in the city.
Thank you very much, Ron. Over to you, Bianca.
Okay, so knowing that we know we need more busing, but what can we do to mitigate that in the meantime, in the interim? Maybe looking at some of the routes and how that they are designed. So longer service hours, I know, is one thing that came up with city engagement. So being able to have on holidays and weekends, and requesting for shorter travel times and less transfers between buses to buses, because sometimes the illusion of having the buses on the road versus the efficiency of the buses can make a big difference. The other thing as well is where some of those bus stops are. I think that is something that I've been hearing a lot from different people as well, is that they have access to a bus stop, but it's far away. And then we won't talk about snow clearing in the wintertime yet, in terms of being able to actually access some of those bus stops. So while we're waiting for some of that funding to have more buses introduced to the system, maybe it's just kind of I would like to see community engagement. So having actual bus riders collaborating with the Metrobus Commission to be a part of some of those decisions. Because sometimes we think we know the answer, but if we don't ride the bus, then we don't necessarily have all the answers. And look, a minute.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Rigel, over to you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that we need very significant expansion in public transit, starting with the bus services. And while I recognize that's something that is like a big cost issue, buses are expensive both to acquire and to maintain and to staff. It is the type of thing that is so important both for accessibility and livability of the city. I mean, it's really hard to get to work on time when you have to jog for 40 minutes. I have to do it fairly regularly, and it creates a problem after a while to show up to a job interview pouring sweat because you just ran 10K. I've heard a lot of people say that, oftentimes if you miss your bus by 5 minutes, it's faster to jog than wait for the next one to show up. And so this is the type of thing that it helps so many other aspects of the city that I think it is worth finding the room in the budget, whether we have to, I believe there's a lot of room in the budget to be found by creating efficiencies without, going through any sort of chainsaw to bureaucracy type measures. And we can find the money to actually really increase the bus services, and it is very much worth doing so. I would want to prioritize that as a big goal, both in terms of rerouting buses, acquiring more buses, hiring more drivers, and increasing our cooperation with CBS and Mount Pearl to allow our communities to be more connected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Well, we're almost there. This is our last round, closing statements. So the order is going to be back to the mayoral candidates. It's going to be Ivy, then Danny, and then for our deputy mayoral candidates, it's going to be Bianca, Rigel, and Ron. We're at 2 minutes because I'm not kind of. I heard the chair yelling 2 behind me somewhere up there. So yes, we'll do 2 minutes to close it off. So, what is something you feel is not being talked about enough or deserves more attention? Over to you, Ivy. No follow-up. This is your final comments to the room. 2 minutes each.
So St. John's may be the oldest city in North America, but that does not mean our infrastructure has to be. To have dreams and vision of a technological advanced city where developers are lined up to invest, where our residents are all housed and have the right to safety, and where residents have full trust in their council. All of this isn't completed overnight, and it's not completed by one person. But if we have one at the helm that cannot envision change, cannot envision growth, where do we start? Our development department requires a new sense of urgency when it comes to completing permitting, and the council must work with their constituents. Attending one biweekly meeting every 3 months is not acceptable for another workplace, so why is it for our council? Why is our city's management per capita paid double, if not over double, our nation's capital and our neighbor Halifax? While the responsibilities are high, the most lucrative gig in municipal government sets the standard for the rest of the council and employees. We have a housing crisis and a drug crisis in our city, and our funds are required elsewhere. I can promise St. John's I have no relatives on council, no family bias that can alter decisions. I've stepped away fully from my business to fully commit to our city's growth and make this community have faith in our council again. I stand to recuse myself from any decisions or discussions on my retail businesses or my husband Hanley's business, Greg Hanley. I will put into place clear policies and procedures for those that are elected who do not recuse themselves. I am a high-standard manager who lives to problem solve, lives under full transparency, and sees our city as a space for innovative development and untapped potential. I will engage our citizens, not just when elections arrive. We need a mayor who isn't afraid to insist on equitable collaboration programs between government, who can admit when they make mistakes and improve on them, who is fiscally responsible and ready to remove the systematic issues in our current system. Our city will no longer be the roadblock to development, to homes being built. I will work with them and ensure our Age City of St. John's Act is improved.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Danny.
Yeah, the one thing that hasn't really been talked about is the fiscal situation, taxes, and those things that come around. And I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack. First of all, I'm going to go back to the City of St. John's Act. And if we take nothing else from this tonight, you need to, when somebody comes to your door, you need to ask about this, because they cannot expect that we're going to solve modern day problems with antiquated legislation and an antiquated fiscal framework. So we've talked about the legislation. City of St. John's Act is 100 years old. It tells you where you can park a horse on Water Street, but it doesn't tell you how to deal with the crises that we're dealing with. But let's talk about the fiscal framework, and we can't change it because the province dictates the legislation. We can't change it. We offered to rewrite it and give it to them to proofread and approve and give back to us, but they turned us down. So this is squarely in the province's hand. On the fiscal framework, and this is a big issue that we talk about at the Big City Mayor's Caucus. We talk about it. I'm on the board of Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador. We cannot continue to rely on property taxes as 75 to 80% of our revenue. It's not sustainable. What we need is we need a new deal with the federal and provincial governments. I'm proposing, and I have proposed, that they take a portion of the increase in their HST revenue every year and divide it amongst the municipalities on a per capita basis. It does a couple of things. First of all, it allows cities to participate in economic development because they get some payback if there's increased economic development. So you take a situation like the Briar. The Briar comes in, raises $10 million. The $500,000 that the province put in to get it, they get that back in HST. The $300,000 that the city puts in, we don't get it back till somebody builds a building. So that's what we need to get to. It's something that you need to talk to your MHA hopefuls when they come to the door. And we need, as a council, whoever's sitting around the table needs to hit the ground running on October 2nd and make sure it's an election issue, because it's the only way that we're going to be able to succeed is if we have the tax situation straightened out.
Thank you very much, Danny. Over to you, Bianca. Now, it is 2 minutes, remember.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I do have a board out there that has a little 101 about how our taxes are paid out based on how much we pay on our property taxes. But I am going to say this: for a city of our size and for how many people we have, we are over 1,200 staff strong. Too many. When you look at the head count for City Hall, there are more people that are doing payroll than in a global corporation. So there are certain places that we can tighten the belt. And I'm not saying that we need to cut jobs. What I'm saying is more so of an administrative audit to make sure that when one role is vacant, that we look at that and really see, okay, does it have to be replaced, or can some of that responsibility be divvied up? Because there's a lot of headcount, and I'm not going to go into the details. These jobs here on this side of the table are part-time. They're part-time jobs and they're part-time pay. So what I would like to see is full-time accountability with City Council, which means full-time jobs, full-time in a full-time role, but really tightening the belt. Because at the end of the day, for every head count what we're paying for, that is tax dollars. Because to Mr. Breen's point, that is coming out of our property taxes. So I would like to kind of go with an administrative audit. Numbers is my thing. And when we talk about that scary number about taxes, that's really what it comes down to. Because all of these great ideas that we want to have, they take money. And I don't want to see any more of that money coming from increasing our property taxes. So because I'm going to run out of minutes, I'm just going to just do a little bit of a plug here. Accessibility is something that we didn't talk about tonight in the city, and with our aging population, and because our city is so beautifully old, it is not accessible. It's one of the most inaccessible cities I have ever experienced. I mean, and I've traveled all over the world. It is very inaccessible. That's something that we need to talk about. So, you know, as much as I know there's a lot of experience in this room, and I've learned a lot this evening, and it's very valuable, but I think that experience without progress becomes the status quo, and people in St. John's are ready for more. And I believe that the city where residents can see and trust where tax dollars are going, that can make a big difference. So we talked about transparency, responsiveness, and accountability. But at the end of the day, having a roof over our head is a right, not a privilege. And Happy City, thank you so much for organizing this tonight. Look.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Over to you, Rigel.
Yeah, in terms of things that haven't been talked about yet, I think we did a pretty good job of covering most of the important issues. I was expecting interlevel jurisdiction to be something that didn't get a lot of attention, but we spent a lot of time on that. So in terms of the goals that I'd want to bring up, it'd really be just focusing on what the holistic goal of all these policies we're advocating for is. Because whether we're talking about housing or transit or crime or public safety individually, the overall goal is to try and make St. John's a healthy, safe, and vital community where the people who are coming out of this institution, MUN, are going to want to stay here to start their careers and are going to have the opportunity and the capacity to do that. Because when I talk to a lot of people in this city, one of the things that kills them is how so many young people take for granted that they have to leave to make a life for themselves, to make a profit, and then hopefully come back later once they're able to. And so I think we need to keep in mind that whatever we're doing, whatever small steps we're able to take, they need to be moving us towards that larger goal of making this a place that not only where the locals born here want to stay, but we're the place that people from across the country want to come to try and get their opportunities started. And because we have the potential to be that. The thing that I hear most is everybody lamenting the missed potential in Newfoundland, and it's absolutely here. So whatever we're doing, like I say, I think the thing that's most important to talk about is making sure that it's moving us in that direction, because people are goal-oriented creatures, and if we have a clear idea of where we're going, then it's going to make it a lot easier to sort through the minutiae of the individual steps about bus regulations and how we argue with different levels of government and how we sort out our tax dollars and how all that gets paid. So in terms of where we talk about, I'd say keep the goal in mind, and thank you very much for Happy City for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rigel. Over to you, Ron.
Matt, thank you, and thank you for doing this evening yourself. Appreciate that. The one thing I don't think we're talking about enough during this campaign is accessibility and inclusion across the board. We have an aging population with over 30% of our seniors in our community that will need services and programs. So the reality is the population shifter there, we're not having that conversation enough, which I'd like to see. Regardless of the development within the city, if you look around the city, you look at Clow Valley, Airport Heights, Kenmount Terrace, Southlands, there's a lot of development moving, there's a lot of houses being built. So a lot of inventory coming to market. So that will come in as we move along. Unfortunately, it's not moving fast enough to meet the needs here. And Rigel and Bianca, we talked about housing and trying to get some of these units that are vacant right now up and running. And when the authority comes there and we get that ability, that'll be a real step forward. I also would like to thank Rigel and Bianca for running great campaigns. These have not been personal campaigns. They've been about the issues. We've been trying to get topics and discussions going. I want to thank you both for that. I really respect you for that and your approach in this campaign. It's about the issues. It's not about the individuals. It's about trying to elevate the discussions in the community and to have discussions go on the path, whichever one of us makes it through. We've agreed that it's got to be about our platform, our issues living after us. It's not about us individually. It's about us trying to serve our community, make our community a better place. So I thank you for that, and I appreciate the opportunity to work inside of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's been a wonderful evening. Now it's... Thank you very much. Really important to note, everyone behind me has spent a great deal of time staring at the back of my head. If you saw a bald spot, I don't want to know about it. Over to you, Drew. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Another round of applause for the candidates. Thank you for coming. I just want to give another heartfelt thank you to all the volunteers for Happy City. Events like this simply wouldn't be possible without your time, energy, and dedication. Whether you help plan, promote, or facilitate this evening, your contribution made a real difference, and thank you. Again, thank you, Matt, for moderating tonight. Before we close, I want to remind you that this isn't the end of the conversation. We're hosting one more candidate talk event tomorrow. On September 16th, we'll be supporting the Georgetown Neighborhood Association with hosting the Ward 2 candidate talk at 7 p.m. at the Lantern, which is 35 Barnes Road. This event will follow a similar format and offer you more opportunities to hear directly from those seeking your vote. We will also be hosting a Jane's Walk on the 21st of September, which is meeting at the intersection of Pine Bud Avenue and Rowan Street. And you guys can check out stjohnsvotes.ca for more details on our events. And thank you for being here and caring about our city and for taking the time to be an informed voter. Have a great night, and we hope to see you next.